This fourth video on drawing a nose has been left to the last. Now why is that? Well, the best portrait photographs and paintings are in the 3/4 view as opposed to looking directly at the viewer. Even a face turned slightly to the side is more interesting than a full frontal. As usual, begin with a very light outline of all the salient features. Check all proportions and angles before darkening up any lines. Also use a sheet of paper under the hand to protect the drawing surface. Do all drawing and shading very lightly at first. It is much easier to correct mistakes at this stage. The final darks will be left to the very last moment. In any portrait, be it human or animal, I prefer to work on the eyes first, as these are the main focus points of the whole painting or drawing. Although this is mainly a nose drawing, I've included the eyes and moustache for added interest. The drawing is already taking on an interesting character of its own. From now on, he'll be watching me very closely to see that I draw his nose correctly. I wonder what look I will get if I don't. Notice how I mostly apply the shading strokes in line with the different surface planes. This will give a correct visual representation, as each surface angle reflects the light differently. Because the initial lines were applied very lightly, it is easy now to correct proportions and angles without having to erase any wrongly applied lines. The dark areas help the shading in the other areas. Because the nose has so many roundings, it is best to apply the shading slowly and lightly at first to get the feel of the different values or tonal ranges. The lobes on each side of the nose is called the ala, A-L-A, and the upturn at the top of the bridge is called the nose root, and we usually have a slight shadow here. Now don't overshade the highlights along the top of the edge of the nose bridge, as well as the one on the ala. There is also one on the tip of the nose. Take your time in this area, don't rush it. Have your reference photograph nearby and in the correct orientation. Constantly flick the eyes back and forth between the photo and the drawing. It is only by careful comparison that a realistic drawing can be produced. Now this is a very good habit to get into. It produces excellent work in the long run. The putty rubber or kneaded eraser is an excellent tool to have. I'm using it here to soften where I've added too much graphite. It's time now to go back and do further work on the eyes. They need darker shading to match those we did on the nose. Now always check for balance. By working the putty rubber into a point, we can control the shading in small delicate areas, as well as lifting out highlights that have been inadvertently filled in. Because of the slight downward tilt of the face, the brows have caused deeper shadows here. It looks like someone has given him a black eye. But don't worry, he'll soon have another one. I've been using a 6B pencil for all these darker shadings. I've gone back to the B pencil and working all over, busy balancing out the dark areas one against the other, because the overall picture is now coming into view. We will shortly begin shading on the cheek area. I'm now using the flat length of the pencil point to scumble the shading on the side of the nose and the cheek. At first, I don't want any streaking in this area, as they might interfere with the delicate skin folds I will add in later on. While we are shading this portion of the cheek, I want you to notice a very thin highlight along the cheek fold. Don't leave it out when we come back here later on. The finishing off of the face is with the 6B pencil, tidying up areas and adding in many small subtle details, such as the tiny creases and a few of the pores. Add just enough for effect. Don't try and add in every single one. We are about to begin an interesting part of the face, the moustache. For this I have taken a steel center punch and filed the point down further. Just make sure it is not a needle point. It must still have a small rounding at the point. We want to emboss the paper, not cut it. Now score into the paper as many of the white hairs as you need. The magic begins when the flat side of the pencil is stroked over the area. See how the hairs suddenly stand out. Score in more hairs over this light shading. These will be the hairs in the shade. With a B pencil and later on with a 5B pencil, add the dark values you see. And when you have done this, shade in the top lip. final touches are made with a paper stump to subtly blend the different areas together. Remember that blending with a paper stump will darken up the areas beneath it, so be cautious when using it. I have the feeling he is very happy with his nose. Don't you think so too?